Greetings my friends and welcome to this week's tactics video. Today we are going to be doing a deep dive into the Lost Brethren Detachment. This is the third video in a series of diving into all three Blood Angels detachments that are coming with the new Codex. One of the most important things to say though is we've had a lot of questions about this. When are we getting the new points values? Rumour is that the points values will be on the 17th of October, so basically 2 weeks from today. And what that will mean is 2 weeks from today, everything in the new Codex will have points, we'll be able to play. So once we're through this video, I guess you'll be able to check out all the detachments and you'll be able to get started straight away with the new Codex. So I've got a lot to cover today. We're going to cover everything about the new Lost Brethren Detachment. We've even got a list. We've got some gotchas in there. We're going to cover everything. So it's going to be a bit of a more in-depth video, but stay tuned. Okay. So if you are just meeting, my name is John. I'm the Blood Angels Commander, and every week I'm going to tell you how to get the most out of your Blood Angels on the tabletop. The Battle Brothers who fall to the embrace of the Black Range are inducted into the ranks of the Death Company. Garbed in black, these Lost Brethren are deployed as shock troops, their hatred and delusions driving them relentlessly forward and inspiring them to into acts of savage violence. Death Company formations are typically focused upon close range combat. Squads of Death Company advance into hails of enemy fire, shrugging off seemingly mortal wounds in their burning reach to slaughter their foes. Towering Dreadnoughts stride across the battlefield, their clawed appendages carving a bloody swath through cowering foes. Skull-helmed Chaplains marshal the lost. They bellow their litanies, stroking the fires of hatred within these hearts of their charge and assuring that every last battle brother meets the honourable death in combat that their heritage demands. So Oath of Moment is still the army rule for Space Marine factions, or Adeptus Astartes as we like to call them. This is going to be a much harder army to get the most out of Oath of Moment, because if you are familiar with the Death Company, then every Death Company unit has already the Black Rage, which means in melee they reroll all their hits. So I guess the way to get the most out of Oath of Moment in this detachment is to use it on not your Death Company units. And that's actually going to prove difficult. We'll come back to that. We'll make sure that we mention it later on. Okay, so the Lost Brethren. The detachment rule for the Lost Brethren. For the Lost Brothers of the Death Company, one final battle remains. The sacrifice of each fallen warrior inspires the surviving brothers to ever greater acts of savage violence. So each time a Death Company model from your army makes a melee attack, reroll a wound of 1 if the model's unit is below starting strength. If the model's unit is below half strength, you can just reroll wounds. And also, you get to add some extra keywords in here. If you select this attachment, Death Company Marines, that's basically Death Company on foot, and Death Company Marines with bolt rifles, they are the other variant on foot. They gain the battle line keyword, so you could have more of them if you want to. You probably actually don't, because I think the best unit for the Death Company is still the Death Company with jump packs. They get the most weapon options, and we'll come on to that a little bit later. So the enhancements are Sanguinius' Grace. As a maddening, hallucinatory memories of a long-forgotten battle flash through the warrior's mind, he is granted a sliver of the Primarch's combat powers. So all these enhancements are Death Company models only, which means these must go on new Death Company captains. Death Company model only, once per battle at the end of the fight phase, if the bearer is within engagement range of 3 or more enemy models, the bearer can fight an additional time. So this is pretty cool. If you had a Death Company captain swarm into something difficult to kill, then you may be able to fight twice. In reality, it's going to be quite hard to do that because you need to be in engagement range of 3 or more enemy models. So that basically means within 1 inch of 3 or more enemies. I feel like the only way that's really going to happen is if you charge like into a big squad of enemy Terminators or something. And even then your opponent can play around that, pooling models that are within combat of the character, essentially, to stop you doing this. So after you fight, you need to be really good with your pile-in to pile in and get within 3. I mean, it is possible. I just think it's going to be hard to do. Blood Shard is the next one. Spiritual energy flows through this crimson gem, filling its bearer with ferocious desire to tear their foes limb from limb. Those infused with this energy may fight on despite suffering seemingly mortal wounds. So this is kind of a quirky one. Death Company model only. The first time the bearer is destroyed at the end of the phase, roll a d6 on a 2-up. So I guess 80-something% chance of the time, 83% chance of the time. You set the bearer back up on the battlefield as close to where he was destroyed and not within engagement range, and with 3 wounds remaining. So basically, probably 5 out of 6 games, this guy's coming back to life with 3 wounds. Could be valuable. To slay the War Master, overcome by maddening hallucinations, this warrior sees in all enemies champions glimmers of Horus's dark majesty and thus strives to destroy them. So Death Company model, once per battle at the start of the fight phase, if the bearer is within engagement range of 1 or more enemy character units, you can select those character units and roll 66 on a 4-up. 1 character model in that unit suffers a mortal wound. So basically it is a grenade that you use in melee. If you think of grenade, you roll 66. So statistically you do 3 mortal wounds to an enemy character if you are within engagement range of them to slay the War Master. And then the final one, which might arguably be the strongest one, Vengeful Onslaught. The Sons of Sanguinius appear to the brothers of the Death Company as a paragon of their Primarch's martial prowess. Should he fall in battle, the vengeful fury of the Lost will be inflamed. So basically, 1 Death Company model only again. If the bearer is destroyed until the end of your next turn, each time a friendly Death Company model makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. So if you die in your turn, essentially you're getting this for your whole opponent's turn and your whole turn again. I guess if you die in your turn, you're getting it for the current turn all the way through again. And it's just pretty good, right? It's just going to give all your Death Company plus 1 to hit. So Death Company currently get a 3-up to hit most of the time. I guess Eviscerators are the exception. So they would become 2-up to hit with all rerolls in melee. Eviscerators probably actually get the best buff out of this because they are currently 4s to hit, so they would move to 3s to hit. So I guess statistically, every Death Company weapon in melee gets about a 10% increase to hit, except the Eviscerators, which get like a 13% increase to hit. So if you could put this on a sacrificial captain that you don't need early in the game, potentially jump him forward, die, buff your whole army for 2 turns to do a bunch of extra damage, and here is the points. So Grace, 20 points, seems okay. The Quirky Revive, 25 points. It's expensive, but sometimes that can be the difference between winning and losing games. You know, like this character comes alive and then he fights again or something like that in a future turn. Slay the War Master, I think, is probably the weakest. You could just spend 1 CP and do a grenade for most part, right? I don't think there's any way to get precision in this detachment. I guess we'll come back to that as well. And then Vengeful Onslaught, for 10 points, I think it's a very, very strong buff. I guess you got to sacrifice a character, but you do have access to those new Death Company captains that kind of want to sacrifice themselves to do a bunch of mortal wounds to enemies. So I don't know if giving up one of those characters for an army-wide buff for basically 2 turns, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. Let's talk about their 6 enhancements. Glorious Sacrifice. 1 Death Company unit from your army was just destroyed while it was in range of an objective marker. You can use this stratagem on the unit even though it was destroyed. You use this in any phase. The objective marker remains under your control even if you have no models within range of it, until your opponent controls it at the start or end of any turn. So this is kind of an interesting one in that Death Company without a chaplain could actually be 0 OC. So they could be standing on an objective, they could be 0 OC when they're on the objective, the opponent shoots them and kills them. They have nothing on the objective, no enemy units on there. You can now pay 1 CP and you gain that objective even though you didn't control it before because the Death Company were 0 OC when not within 12 inches of a chaplain. So an interesting one. I don't really recommend using Death Company models to secure objectives, but you're going to need so much Death Company in this detachment that could be happening, right? Armor of Contempt is reduce opponent's AP by 1. It's always a good stratagem. It's always 1 CP. Final Retribution. Do you know what? I forgot to read their lore. Even in death, the Lost bring victory to the chapter, so that is Glorious Sacrifice, Armor of Contempt. The belligerence of the Adeptus Astartes combined with their enhanced physiology makes them unyielding foes to face. Okay, Final Retribution. These battle brothers have already accepted their death when they seek to strike one last telling blow against the enemy. So this is the fight on death for 1 CP. Basically, you're going to fight on death on a 4-up. If you're within 12 inches of a chaplain, you'll fight on death on a 3-up. So it's a pretty good stratagem. You're going to have a lot of Death Company in this detachment. You're probably going to get charged a lot. You're probably going to have chaplains all over the place. Bully Boys Orcs had this, and it was just fight on death on 3-up for the Bully Boys. It was pretty reliable. I guess if you lose a 10-man squad, 6 or 7 guys are fighting back, which is pretty good. Death Company reroll hits even when they're charged. It's a good stratagem, handy to have to have access to it. And it doesn't cost. I prefer it being 1 CP because I feel like in the index where it was 2 CP to fight on death, it was super expensive. Whereas with 1 CP, it almost means anytime your opponent charges your death company, they are going to be fighting. It would be very unlikely that you wouldn't have 1 CP, and unless you lose like 1 or 2 death company, right? But you know, you select it after the enemy has selected its target, so the enemy is going to be like, I'm charging your death company with a tiny little squad. Maybe you don't play it. I'm charging your death company with something that's going to kill your entire death company. Definitely play fight on death, right? It's a pretty simple stratagem to use. We then go into Furious Onslaught. 1 death company from your army just before the unit piles in until the end of the phase. Each time your unit makes a pile in, you can move D3 plus 3 instead of just 3. If your unit's within 12 inches of a chaplain and below starting strength, it can move 6 inches instead. So this just basically means that, like, if you've got a big strung out unit of death company and some of the guys at the back were potentially not going to be able to fight, 1 CP gives them a 6-inch move when you pile in, means you're just going to be able to get everybody in. This detachment's going to be all about charging and killing. You're not going to do much killing in this detachment if you're not charging. So being able to pile in 6 inches is... It's going to open up some plays that are probably not there. It's going to let you wrap, maybe, you know, like occasionally you might want to wrap a transport, get 10 death company around the transport, so if the opponent's transport explodes, they can't spill any models out because you've got the whole transport wrapped. There's nowhere for them to put their models without desperate escaping and stuff like that. So Furious Onslaught, I think, is pretty useful. The Lost to the Rage, very powerful stratagem. You play it in the fight phase. 1 death company unit that is below starting strength has not been selected to fight this phase. Until the end of the phase, improve attack, strength, and AP by 1. If you're not within 12 of a chaplain, your weapons become hazardous. The cool thing about this one is you can play it when you are charged. So you are charged, you can play this, so your death company unit is going to get +1 attacks, +1 strength, +1 AP. That'll take those eviscerators to AP3, it'll take those chainswords to AP2, and it'll take the power fist to AP3. None of the other detachments have a way of boosting AP like this, so this makes the death company kind of horrific in combat. The caveat is you need to have someone in your squad dead. So it's going to be easier to play this on 10-man units, because... You know, you're also going to get more value, right? If you're playing this on a 9-man unit, you're going to get a lot more value if you're playing on a 4-man unit. So Lost to the Rage is one of the best. And we're going to come on ways of how you can do this later to basically get Lost to the Rage nice and early in the game. And then Wrathful Rampage. Right after your death company unit advances, until the end of the turn, unit is able to declare a charge in which it advanced. If your unit's within 12 inches of the chaplain or below starting strength, until the end of the turn, you can shoot and charge. So many benefits here for being near chaplains, a few benefits for being below starting strength. It's nice that you play this after the unit advances. So if you roll a 1 on your advance roll, you could be like, well, actually, I'm going to advance another unit elsewhere in the battlefield. I think I'll roll better than a 1. So you don't have to play Wrathful Rampage like up front. You get to move, then you get to advance, and then you get to decide, do I want to advance and charge? So if you roll a 6, and you think those death company are going to move 18 inches, yes, we're going to Wrathful Rampage, we're going to get that giant charge. Cool. Okay, so some reasonably good stratagems and reasonably good enhancements. The enhancements are all limited to death company captains. Every stratagem is limited to death company except Armor of Contempt. You can play that on anyone. So, like, with the detachment rule being all about death company, the enhancements about death company captains, and the stratagems all about death company, there's really going to narrow what you can use, right? Like, there's only like 6 units in the entire Codex that have the Death Company keyword. So let's talk about them. But before we talk about them, if you have got this far and you are enjoying this video, if you think you're going to learn something, I'm here every Friday with a new video telling you how to do better at Blood Angels. You should subscribe. If you like the video, please do the like button. And if you click the bell underneath the video, that's how you get notified. A lot of people always tell me, John, you're live, I didn't get the notification. Well, you got to click the bell and set your notifications to all. If you don't click the bell, you don't get notified. All right, let's talk about the notable units of this detachment. So we've got the Death Company Dreadnought. He's basically a Brutalis Dreadnought, but he has this Driven by Fury rule. So if the opponent shoots him, he can make a move towards the nearest enemy of up to D6. D6 plus 2. So 3 to 8 inches. The problem with this guy right now is he is 220 points. I think he's horrifically overcosted towards the 160 point Brutalis. So Like I said at the start of the video, the updated points costs are coming on the 17th. I think he should be about the same as the Brutalis, but this is where he stands right now. At 220 points, I do not think I'm fielding him. The Brutalis can do 6 mortal wounds on the charge. This guy can get a little bit more movement. Is a little bit more movement and a feel no pain going to make up for the 6 mortal wounds? It's hard to say. The difference as well is this guy is OC 0 without the Chaplains, so again it comes back to having Chaplains. If you are building this guy, you really want to build him with the Blood Talons, because the Talons give you the sweet profile. It's worth noting that you can actually use that below starting strength to get 1 extra strength, 1 extra attack, 1 extra AP on this guy. It's not something we would probably see all that often, but if you did get extra AP and an extra attack on this guy, you would be 7 attacks at strength 13 minus 3 flat 3 damage with the striking. Pretty good at killing Terminators or something like that. So maybe if this guy comes down in points, he could be good. Right now, I'm not 100% sure. Death Company Captain next. So this is a captain on foot. He will join basically the 2 units of Death Company on foot, which are the Death Company with bolt rifles and the Death Company Marines, which we talked about as battle line. So he joins those battle line units. While this model is leading a unit, unless the unit starts embarked in a transport, models in that unit have the Scout 6 ability. So basically, if you're on foot, I actually don't think you would play them on foot. You would probably start them in the transport. Then you would get Scout. I guess he has probably you want to arm him with Infernal Pistol and probably the Power Fist just to give him the most attacks. Again, he gets the standard Black Rage, he gets the Feel No Pain 6 up. Death Vision of Sanguinius. If this model is destroyed by a melee attack after the attacking unit finishes making attacks, you roll a d6, add 2 to the result if it's the Warlord. On a 2 to 3, the enemy takes D3. On 4 to 5, they take 3. And on a 6+, they take D3 plus 6. So basically, all the Death Company captains have this quirky thing. This was like a once per game ability in the last edition, whereas now it's basically baked into all the Death Company characters, and basically up to 6 mortal wounds when you are killed in combat. Bear in mind, you could combo this captain, or any of the captains that have this ability, with that on a 2-up, they come back to life with 3 wounds. So you could charge into something you're not expecting to kill, they kill your captain, you could do up to 6 mortal wounds, and then you could come back to life, right? So potentially, or if they kill you in their turn, they charge your captain, they kill your captain, you could do up to 6 mortal wounds. On a 2-up, you could come back, then you could just charge in again and die all over again and do another 6 mortal wounds. So there is some quirkiness and some fun to the Death Company captain. And I guess you could even fight on death. I hadn't considered that. You could when they charge you, you could pay your 1 CP, you could fight on death. He does have the Death Company keyword. So a lot of quirks here. So this is the Death Company captain on foot. We've got the Death Company captain with jump pack next. Very similar, except this time while he's leading the unit, he's going to give sustained 1. So he's going to give a good amount of additional hits. Death Company, 10-man Death Companies get like 45 attacks. They get 25 attacks on the Chainswords. They get like 12 from the Power Fists, 8 from the Eviscerator. So 45 attacks, sustained 1. Statistically on 45 attacks, you're probably rolling like 7 or 8 6s. So we're probably giving you about 8 extra attacks. He has the same Death Visions of Sanguinius. Sorry, again, you probably want to take the Power Fist. For his shooting weapon, you probably want to take the Plasma Pistol because you'll be able to overcharge that, and we'll come back to why overcharging plasmas is good for this detachment. 100 points on the Death Company captain with the jump packs. Death Company on bolt rifles, they're 90 points. They can take a maximum of 1 Plasma Pistol. I think they get 1 Eviscerator per 5. They can do a free Heroic Intervention, or they can do a free Overwatch. I think the Overwatch is pretty lackluster, so you probably want to be using Heroic Intervention if you're going to use these guys. Up until now, not many people have taken them, right? Like, I don't think Death Company Marines with bolt rifles are that impactful. By taking the bolt rifles, you give up your close combat weapons. So in close combat, you basically only have like 3 attacks at strength 4, no EP. I think you're better having the very next squad, which is the Death Company Marines with chainswords, essentially. They're just called regular Death Company Marines. They have, each time a model in units to make an attack, if they're below starting strength, they get sustained 1. If they're below half strength, they get sustained 2. So these guys get pretty nasty when they lose a bunch of models. Again, they can take a Plasma Pistol, they can take like a Power Fist, and a couple of Eviscerators per squad. So They're okay. I think if you're going to be putting Death Company on foot, I think it would be better to have these ones than the ones with bolt rifles. And bear in mind, their sustained ones will bleed over onto their captains. So if you are leading these guys with captains or chaplains, then they are going to benefit and get sustained too, potentially. And if those guys have 2 damage weapons, that can be meaningful. Typically at the end of the game, right, you've got a squad of like a character plus 1 or 2 guys while they're getting sustained too. So the Death Company become pretty nasty as you move on. And I guess you know, when your squad's down to 1 or 2 guys, you're re-rolling all your wounds. You're potentially also getting that +1 strength, +1 attack, +1 AP. So if you have a captain with a power fist, like I mentioned before, he could be getting sustained 2 and re-roll all wounds. Could be pretty impactful, right? So they can take 1 power fist, 95 points for 5. Death Company with jump packs, these guys, 230 points for 10. They get the most weapon options, and we'll come back to the weapon options later. It's important to know that they can take 4 plasma pistols in this 10-man. If you do take 4 plasmas, 2 plasmas need to be on guys with power fists, 2 plasmas can be on guys with bolt pistols, or heavy bolt pistols they call it now. You reroll charges, which is very useful. Feel no pain, standard, deep strike, etc, etc. So these guys are primed for rapid ingress. And I think if you're going to be playing this detachment, and I've got a list for this detachment a little bit later on, thinking about this detachment, I was thinking, how many bricks of 10 of these guys can we have? Because they've got the most weapon options, and they've got the most plasma pistols. And we may as well just mention, if they've got 4 plasma pistols and they're led by a character with a plasma pistol, bear in mind they don't have to necessarily be led by the character with a plasma pistol, but if you have 4 plasma pistols, or potentially 5, if you're able to shoot all 5 plasma pistols, or all 4, before you charge, you could actually kill one of your own models by overcharging those plasma pistols, which if you're trying to, at the start of the game, you know, get your reroll wounds from your detachment, or get access to that +1 strength, +1 attack, +1 AP, if you're trying to get access to that, it'd be pretty handy to kill one of your own guys with the plasma pistols. So while these guys can take infernal pistols in this detachment, I think you probably want to take everybody with plasma pistols. You probably want to take your character with plasma pistols as well, because if you've got a Death Company captain leading these guys, then you're looking at 5 plasma pistols, so that's, you're rolling 5 hazardous. You would hope, normally you hope you get no ones. You would hope you would get a single one. Hopefully the 3 mortal wounds is enough to kill one guy. Bear in mind, you could feel no pain, some of those mortal wounds. But yes, I feel like there's a good chance you can kill one of your own models, which benefits this Death Company with jump packs. I put down the regular chaplain here because I think we are going to want to field some chaplains. If you are unfamiliar with how chaplains can attach, all the Death Company datasheets in the new Codex have these call-outs where saying, like, if a chaplain could attach to assault intercessors, or a chaplain could attach to other ones, this is how you can attach chaplains to Death Company. I also want to call out Astaroth and Lamartas, obviously very important characters in this detachment. I did a whole video on Astaroth and Lamartas like 2 weeks ago. I'll link it up above. So if you're confused on which one of those is best for your various detachments, then they're both great, actually. So both of them work really well in this detachment. You could put a chaplain on foot into help. Like, you're going to need, I think you're going to need like at least 4 chaplains here, right? Because every single Death Company model is, what is it? It's ineligible to fall back and have OC0 when there's no chaplain within 12. And ineligible to fall back is generally not great because I was going to say because you normally get a bonus when you're charging, but I guess you don't get that. But I still think you sometimes do want to fall back. You could be in a no-win situation and you just need to get out of combat. So being ineligible to fall back is generally bad. And then obviously having no OC is also pretty generally bad. So I think 4 chaplains seems to be where I was landing. Like, I think 4 minimum. So let's talk about like some of the strategies from this detachment and the list. So if I was going to be building this Lost Brethren list, and we're about to look at that in a second, I'd said previously, if you want to get the most out of an army, absolute most, you need 1,200 points of units in that army that benefit from your detachment rule. Typically, your detachment rule is one of the strongest rules that you get. So if you're not benefiting from that, from like, I guess 1,200 points is like 6/10. So if you've not got like 60 or 70% of the models in your detachment benefiting from your detachment rule, you're putting yourself at a great disadvantage. So if I was going to be building this Lost Brethren list, I thought to myself, maybe start with like You know, we often see 2 Gladiator Lancers, that's like 320 points. You could put that in. We see a bunch of scoring units, right? Like Scouts, Jump Intercessors, Impulsors, something like that. And then characters and melee units. So right here, if you add these 2 numbers together, I've got 1,300 points. So basically, I was thinking that I would need 1,300 points. Actually, I can't do maths, because I've said here... Oh yeah, no, that's right. 1,300 points is characters and melee units, and all these characters and melee units would be trying to benefit from our detachment rule. So that's actually going to be kind of difficult to do because a bunch of the characters don't have the Death Company keyword, like the Chaplains that you need, like Astroth, Lamartes, the Chaplains. They don't have the Death Company keyword. So getting 1,200 points is very difficult. So the list I've ended up coming up with for this detachment has no range firepower. I figured that I actually need to spend these 300 points to have even more melee units. So this is like an all-melee Death Company list with somewhere like 1,250 points benefiting from the detachment rule. I think this makes this army going to be very difficult to play, to a high level anyway, and Liberators, and I'm going to come back later and talk about, because you could essentially play the same list in Liberator Assault Group, and how do I feel those 2 things come together. So I've got more on that later. I know this is information overload. Maybe you want to watch the video a couple of times. As always, I do try to answer a bunch of comments, so leave a comment down below. I answer like at least half the comments every week on the videos. I get hundreds of comments every week. I can't answer every one, but I try my best. So how do I maximize the detachment bonus, right? So to get the most detachment bonus, you actually really want your units to be below starting strength. So larger units, I think, are going to benefit more from this because they're more likely to lose 1 or 2 guys, get more benefit from being, you know, units lost and not wiped. Thus, I think it would be better, which I don't normally recommend, which is just, I don't normally recommend tons and tons of blocks of 10 guys because they're vulnerable to blast, they're difficult to hide, they're hard to play. If you lose one, it's very costly to lose. But I think this detachment actually promotes that. You want to have as many 10 as possible. So I thought I might try and balance this by having some cheap transports, because you need to score some points, right? And also try and have both some standard strong picks with some new quirky relics. Given that the quirky relics only go to Death Company captains, let's get some of them in there and see what we can do with them. Every single Death Company model does have the potential to fight on death. So I'd try and use some well-placed Chaplains to ensure this is getting improved to 3 up when possible. I would also overcharge plasma pistols in the shooting phase. If I lose one of my guys, being access to both their detachment rule and lost to rage, which is +1 attack, +1 strength, +1 AP, which is pretty great. If you lose one guy, you know, one guy has what? If it's 10-man Death Company, you lose one guy, alright, you pick up one guy that had a chainsword, so you lose 5 chainsword attacks. What do you get? Well, you get back 4 chainsword attacks from the other 4 guys, and then you get 2 more power fists, 3 more power fists, 2 more eviscerators. They all have additional strength, they all have additional AP. You can see why that's worth it, right? Reroll wounds while at max. Yeah, but here's the question though, right? Rerolling wounds while not at max strength. So basically, like, if you have 10-man squad, like I just said, you've got 25 chainsword attacks, you've got like 8 eviscerators, 12 power fists, which makes 45 attacks. So 10-man Death Company squad, jump Death Company, get 45 attacks. So they would need about 40 wound rolls, right? So if you have 40 wound rolls, you roll approximately 6 or 7 ones. Whereas a 9-man squad has 35 wound rolls. So basically, like, if you look at them side by side, if you're only killing a unit or killing a model from your unit to get reroll wounds, the net is very, very small, right? But if you're losing a model to play Lost to Rage, then the net is quite big. So basically, the way I saw this was every turn, when you're charging with a 10-man unit of Death Company or whatnot, you want one of them to not be at max strength. If the rest are at max strength, that's fine. I mean, they're inevitably going to lose models and get buffed. But in turn 1, you actually only want one squad to lose a guy, and the squad that loses a guy is the Lost to Rage squad. So you can overcharge all the plasma pistols in one squad. If you lose a guy, perfect. Lost to Rage is going in that squad, and then the other squads don't need to overcharge this turn, right? So that's kind of how I was looking at it, because I don't think that giving up basically, like, you're giving up basically 5 wound rolls to have 6 or 7 ones. Well, statistically, if you have to re-roll your wound rolls, 6 or 7 ones against giving up 5, it's going to be it's going to be very, very minute. I guess if you lose one guy, maybe you get one extra attack or something. I don't know if I feel like losing a guy at 20-point model, I guess. How many points is a Death Company guy? Yeah, it's like 20-something points. If it's the jump ones, they must be like 17 points a model because it's 230, 17 and a half. So I wouldn't give up 17 and a half points for one extra attack, right? That's kind of where I see it. So let's talk about a 1,000 point sample list for the Lost Brethren. I think I want infiltrators because I like just putting a squad of infiltrators in the backfield and going, I don't need to worry about the backfield. It makes it very easy, right? So then I'm going to take an Impulsor with a shield dome. This will be an action monkey. Inside will be a Chaplain and 5 Death Company Marines. That's going to have 1 Power Fist, 1 Infernal Pistol. These are Death Company Marines with chainswords, if there's any doubt there. I'm going to do the exact same thing again. So we're going to have 2 Impulsors. So my plan is push both Impulsors up, unload the units. The Impulsors will sit on objectives, do actions. Infiltrators will hold the backfield. And then what else will I have? Well, I'll have Lamartas with 10 Death Company. They'll be able to fire their 4 Infernal Pistols and try and Lost for Rage in turn 1, like we just said. And we'll have we'll have a Death Company Captain with a jump pack. Just a single Death Company model because I had 100 points left. And we haven't seen singular characters all that much. He won't have any OC or anything like that, so he's just a missile. He's just going to jump into harm's way. He's probably going to die. He's going to try and do those 6 mortal wounds to my enemy. That is 1,000 points. How am I going to build this into 2,000, though? And that's where things get interesting. We're then going to take Astrath and another 10. So we'll have 4 more Plasma Pistols, we'll have 3 Power Fists, 2 Eviscerators. We're then going to take a Death Company Captain with the Sanguinius' Grace, which is the Fight Twice enhancement. Remember, you fight twice if you manage to get in engagement range of 3. We're going to take another 10 Death Companies. Now we've got 30 Death Company Marines with jump packs. We're going to then take another Death Company Captain with a Blood Shard, so he's the reviving one. Again, he could do more. Both these captains will do mortal wounds when they die, and he's going to be attached to 5 more, so we're now at 35 Death Company with jump packs. We're also going to take a squad of Scouts. They're like my 4th unit that are action monkeys. I've got my Impulsors, the 2 Impulsors. I've got the Scouts. Now I've got the Infiltrators, so I've kind of got 4 units that can perform actions. Scouts can pick up and come back down, redeploy, very useful for teleport homers or behind enemy lines or something like that. And then I'm going to give Vengeful Onslaught to our single captain that we had in this last list. Vengeful Onslaught is that one where when that character on his own dies, my whole army gets +1 to hit until the end of my next turn. So this, in the 2,000 point list, this guy basically becomes a missile who I want to die to do 6 mortal wounds to one of my enemies, and then give my whole army +1 to hit. Well, it's not the whole army, is it? It's everything that has Death Company. So if we break this actually down on the 2,000 point list, what do we actually have, right? We have the Infiltrators on the home objective. We have the 2 Impulsors to do actions. We've got 4 Chaplains, 2 on foot, the 2 named Chaplains. So hopefully we can spread that out and have each one has a 12-inch bubble. Hopefully we can get most of our Death Company inside those bubbles to give them OC and the potential to fall back. Also benefits a bunch of the stratagems as well. We've got the 3 10-man bricks of Death Company with jump packs. We've got the 3 Death Company Chaplains, captains, all have the quirky enhancement, one shape or another. We've got the Scouts. We've got 2 5-man foot Death Company who are going to contest the midfield with the Chaplains. The idea is that if the enemy charges those midfield objectives, we're going to fight on death, probably, and just try and hold those objectives with our Chaplains. And those Chaplains on foot, once per game, can like auto-pass a battle shock within 12 inches. We're going to need everything to be within 12 inches anyway, right? Because we need OC and we need to be able to fall back, so it's just going to give us more reliability in terms of holding things. And then we've got 5 more jump Death Company. So what we actually have here is like 45 Death Company, and then the 3 Death Company characters. So there'll be 48 models. How many points benefit from the detachment rule? Well, in this list it would be 1,340 points, which is significantly higher than the 1,200, which was the minimum I recommended. But it's actually much harder to get to this value because all 4 Chaplains do not have the Death Company keyword. So they can't benefit from basically anything in this detachment. So Astrath, Lamartes, and the 2 Chaplains don't benefit at all. I think that's a bit of a oversight maybe, because that makes it like you're going to have the Chaplains. So it actually makes it hard. I don't think you could go much higher than this, right? Especially when you try and put some scoring units in there. Like I only have 1 squad of Scouts. I only have the 2 Impulsors. I suppose arguably you could have a unit of Death Company that sits on your home field that when they die you pay the CP and try and hold it, but they'd only be like 5 or 10 points cheaper than Infiltrators. So I think the Infiltrators are a better choice. If you did want to try and include some long-range fire support, like the double Lancer or a double Predator, it would push your list down to probably only 1100 or 1200 points of Death Company, which is below the threshold that I recommend for your detachment, so it's going to actually make it harder to get the most from the detachment. So this is... I've been doing the Army List show now, actually, for like 3 weeks, since the new Codex came out, right? No one yet has submitted a Lost Brethren list. I guess no one has submitted it because it's actually quite hard to build, to be able to score points, to win games, and to actually benefit from the detachment. And also the fact that you don't really get any benefit till your units start dying is a bit weird overall. And I mean, maybe I hadn't fully considered the plasma pistols, but now I've explained that to you. So I guess my next thing to say is, if you are considering building a Lost Brethren list, I'd love to see it, to see what it looks like, to see if it's anything like mine. Let's do a bit of an overview, right? So is this detachment strong enough versus Liberator Assault Group? When I go into this detachment, we're forced to pick some units I typically wouldn't consider in lag, which is all these Death Company captains. I also probably wouldn't consider 4 Chaplains. And all for a detachment bonus that doesn't even kick in until you start to die, right? There's the notable absence of the Sangre Guard, of Jump Assault Intercessors, which are arguably 2 of our strongest units. I think if you look at the last 12 months of competitive 40k, right, we've seen plenty of people do really well with Death Company. Yes, Death Company had slightly better weapon options before, but I still think Death Company are totally valid in Liberator Assault Group. I'm running 10. I think we've already seen people looking to run 20. So, even with the changes to the weapon options, they're still arguably some of our best units. They're the only jump units now we have that can take, like, multiple Power Fists, or 3 Power Fists and 2 Eviscerators, right? Like, Jump Assault Intercessors just cannot be loaded out to do as much damage. And Sangre Guard are an interesting place where, like, they will basically always need stratagem spent on them because they need +1 to wound, and they probably need Lances +1 to wound, whereas the Death Company can get that from their characters, so they maybe don't need the same stratagem spend. So I think it's hard to say this detachment is actually better for Death Company than Liberator Assault Group, and that Liberator Assault Group doesn't tie one hand behind your back, which is kind of what this detachment feels like. Will the Lost Brethren be fun? Yeah, I mean, it does seem like it could be fun, right? Honestly, I've not seen anyone else make lists for this yet, and so we're going... This Sunday will be like the 4th Army List show since the new Codex, so somebody. Let's see a Lost Brethren list. Let's see one that's got like 1200 points of Death Company in it, because I think if it's less than that, like I said, you could have one hand tied behind your back. So 1200 points of Death Company, I think, is needed to probably get the most out of the detachment. I was really thinking about doing more Impulsors in this detachment, right? Because Impulsors aren't limited to the same battle line limitations of 3. They're fast, cheap, durable. We need something to do actions and score points. So I thought we could maybe even go harder on Impulsors. I'm not sure, but I also do worry about my Chaplain placement, because I feel like, at least in my experience, I've always tried to run Chaplains with the Death Company because I really don't like it when they are no OC. Now, I know some people do that, but I just feel like my lists or my gameplay seems to go better if my Death Company always have OC. So yeah, this is it. This is the deep dive into the Lost Brethren. If you've already played it, I'd love to hear your comments down below. If you've got any suggestions or anything that I missed, I'd also love to hear it. That's this week's tactics video. I hope you've taken a bit of that knowledge in. I know there was a lot of information. Please feel free to leave me a comment down below. Remember as well, the new pre-orders for Blood Angels go live tomorrow, and there is links for both Element Games and Wargame Portal in the video description. These will save you some money whenever you're buying your new Blood Angels. If you didn't see the video yet about all the new stuff for pre-order, I will link it up above. Thanks so much for watching. This has been a fun video. I do not have enough death... Do I have 45 Death Company? Probably not. I have just commissioned a second Impulsor, but I do think it will be fun. Whether it's competitive or not, time will tell. But I hope you guys all have a great weekend. I will not be live tomorrow night because I have a wedding dance to attend. So I'll see you guys on Sunday, 8 PM for the Army List show. Thanks ever so much for watching. I hope you all have a great week. By the blood are we made strong. Peace.